My husband, 35 years old, does not have a car. He sold his old one to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that did not affect me till my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hang out places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad his driving is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asked if he could drive my car to the wedding, but I refused, but not because I'm not invited. Another story for another day, because like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit, calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and couldn't find my car either. I was beyond pissed. I called him, and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for a whole 5 days, and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do it 'cause you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, swearing over and over that I gave him permission to take it, and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend a wedding that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to be there with his family and decided to extend his stay, and he still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful. I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband, and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted, and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called back / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency, so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong. So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent. I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice with these purchases only adding up to £80 and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclosed this to was my dad as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurned on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with but basically started demanding I let them use the card and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later as I was setting the table his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him she cooked meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up getting ready to leave. He told me no offense but this meal, that his mom cooked, was even more of a favorite than the one I cooked. And grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal. And used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me asking if I really did that then called me petty and horrible then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way I'm 26 and he's 28. To make one thing clear and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make and I try to do that but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. I will be sitting down with my husband soon. After he breaks the silence I'm just giving him the space he said he wanted. I will also be pushing for couples counseling, although he's always been against it, but we'll see how things go. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel upset and like my efforts aren't being appreciated. His mom is definitely onto something with her little upsetting stunts. I realize how important boundaries are, but also realize how enforcing can be difficult. I'm hoping and praying that we will tackle this issue so that our marriage won't suffer. But if he's still somehow unable to do his part, then that's on him, and I'm no longer willing to go through similar stuff and just take it.